Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Finding Yourself Again, where we focus on hope, healing, and recovery from toxic narcissistic abuse. The ultimate goal is to establish self-love, healthy relationships, and ultimately find yourself. My name's Dontre. I'm a survivor of toxic abuse from a narcissist/borderline. And if you find these videos to be helpful to you, I ask that you subscribe, like, share, and watch any other videos on my channel that may be helpful to you. I ain't gonna hold y'all up. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Alright, y'all, so for today's topic is gonna be how to love yourself after abuse or trauma. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great day today. Taking care of yourself, eating good, practicing self-compassion, self-care, self-love, and the whole nine. And before I get into this video, I just want to say something. Every day is different, right? Every day we're faced with new opportunities. We're faced with new problems. And, I have been facing a problem in my life more recently, right? And, I'm not gonna super go into detail about what it is, right? But at the end of the day, I'm saying that to say that not every day is gonna be perfect. There's gonna be days where you have setbacks. There's gonna be days where things can get to you emotionally and cause you to react. And that's okay. For me, something that I've been working on is my reactions to things that I perceive as negative or things that I don't like, right? Which makes sense. I mean, if somebody says or does something to you that you don't like, or in any circumstance that you don't like in life, you can react. You can react in a series of ways. You can react in a calm way, in a belligerent way. However you react is going to determine the consequences, right? I'll say every single time that I have ever reacted emotionally, it has always turned out to be a negative. It always turned out to go bad. I've never had a time where I reacted in an emotional state and it turned out to be good. So just think about that. If you're out there, for me, reaction is like one thing that I've had to seriously work on, especially in my community of people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I come from like a hood type of background, you know what I mean? So whenever something happens to you in the hood, what do? You're supposed to do something about it, right? So I come from a background that believes that. So to have, to start to change the way that I think is not, it's difficult because I grew up thinking this way, you know what I'm saying? And then I have to change my whole way of thinking now. So whenever somebody calls me a bitch, or whenever somebody gets in my face or whatever, now I have a different thought process where I don't have to react. I don't got to do shit to you. You know what I mean? You can look like the fool and be yelling and doing all this crazy shit. I'm chilling. I'm not gonna, I don't even want to fight nobody. You know what I mean? Like, I just want you to leave me the fuck alone so I don't have to worry about getting in trouble or getting hurt. So I'm cool on all that stuff, but I just wanted to kind of mention that before I get into today's video, because that's something that I've been really working on in my life, is just reacting to the negatives in life. You know what I mean? And just really just taking that second, the second of your time to just think like, okay, I don't like this and I want to react or say something, but is that really going to help me, or is there a better way that I can address this, a more efficient way that would be more helpful for everybody? Try to think like that. So that topic, I'm more than likely gonna make a whole video about that alone, and I'll look more into that. But today's video is not gonna be about that. Today's video is about how to love yourself after abuse or trauma. right? So first, I'm going to go over the definition of self-love, right? So self-love is a state of appreciation for oneself that grows from actions that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. It involves holding a high regard for your own well-being and happiness, taking care of your own needs, and not sacrificing your well-being to please others. Self-love encompasses self-acceptance, self-respect, self-care, self-compassion, and a belief in your own inherent worth, regardless of past experiences or imperfections. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and patience that you would offer a dear friend or loved one, right? So that was a kind of a mouthful, but I'm not really going to go over that because I think everybody has a basic understanding of what self-love is. So next we're going to talk about the impact of trauma or toxic / narcissistic abuse on self-love. So it says abuse and trauma, especially when prolonged or experienced in childhood, can severely erode a person's ability to love themselves. Here are some of the ways. So I'm going to go over some of the ways that this erodes the ability to love themselves. So the first one is erosion of self-worth. Abuse often involves constant criticism, devaluation, and blame, leading the victim to internalize negative beliefs about themselves and their worthiness of love and respect, which can typically happen in the early stages of childhood, teenhood, like early adulthood. In the family dynamics is usually where this normally begins. And it basically just keeps on going as you get older, because since you're used to that dynamic, you end up getting involved in a toxic relationship with a similar dynamic, or even worse. The next is going to be distorted self-perception. Toxic relationships and trauma can warp one's sense of reality and perception. Victims may start to believe the negative narratives projected onto them by abusers. And it makes sense, right? Because let's say you're in a relationship with an abuser and they're constantly feeding you negative information about yourself when it's not true, but you're fed this information so much, you could even start to believe this information even after you leave them, even after you break up. I remember when I broke up with my toxic partner, I was still questioning myself, like, damn, like, what's wrong with me? Like, am I ugly? Am I boring? Am I like, was I that bad of a person, or a romantic partner that this had to happen to me? And the answer is no. I'm perfectly fine. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I'm fine enough to not, nobody deserves that type of treatment in a relationship, right? The next one is difficulty trusting oneself. Repeated betrayal and manipulation can lead to a deep distrust of one's own judgment, intuition, and feelings. And it makes sense because you're repeatedly betrayed, manipulated, and it's like you're gaslighted so much to where you second guess yourself a lot, right? So it's hard to really trust yourself. The next one is prioritizing others' needs. Survivors often learn to prioritize the needs and feelings of their abusers as a survival mechanism, neglecting their own needs and desires. This pattern can persist long after the abuse ends, making self-care feel selfish. And I've definitely felt like that. I definitely have felt before, like, oh, if I do anything for myself, it's selfish. If I spend too much money on myself, I'm being selfish. And just prioritizing others' wants and needs over my own in general. You know what I mean? I noticed I do that a lot. And what it generally does, what I've noticed, what it does for me and my relationships in life is, the people value me and respect me a lot less when it seems like I don't value and respect myself. So when I prioritize other people's needs over my own, it shows that you value and respect them over you. That's the image that you're giving, and I don't want people to think that, you know what I mean? I don't want people to think that, they're more valuable than me, because they're not. I'm more valuable than them. You know what I mean? In my opinion, I'm more valuable, you know? And I'm not trying to say that I'm better than anybody, but to me, this is my life. I'm in control of this life. I'm not in control of theirs, so obviously my life is more important, and valuable to me than theirs is to me. So start to kind of look at it like that, and start to look at ways where you can start to trust yourself and prioritize your own needs over theirs. All right, so next is going to be internalized shame and guilt. Victims often carry immense shame and guilt, even for things that were not their fault. This can create a barrier to self-acceptance and self-compassion. So that's gonna block your self-acceptance and self-compassion, walking around with immense shame and guilt. And what's even more ridiculous is a lot of times we have this shame and guilt for our abusers, or people that, like, it's not even anything that we necessarily did. You know what I mean? But we have this shame and guilt. And it's not only is it like directed at the wrong person, which is you, right? But it's also a barrier to help, it's a barrier for self-acceptance and self-compassion. So you're definitely going to want to just forgive yourself for any and all past situations. That's a really big thing. I'm going to be making a whole video on forgiving yourself, what that looks like, and just like these videos. It's going to be similar style, and, so stay tuned for that. Next is fear of vulnerability. Past hurtful experiences, when vulnerable, can make it difficult to be open and kind to oneself, fearing further pain or judgment, usually because of the voice of the abuser. And that kind of goes like with what I was saying earlier, right? You've heard so much negative information from the abuser that it starts to kind of stick with you, and you're vulnerable. You're in a state of vulnerability. You don't want to experience any pain. You're scared of abandonment, and you're just really, it's this experiences that you've went through. Next is disconnection from one's self. Trauma can lead to dissociation and a feeling of being disconnected from one's own body, emotions, and needs, making it challenging to nurture oneself. And that makes absolutely a lot of sense, because if you're dissociated or feeling disconnected from your body, emotions, and needs, how are you going to be able to nurture yourself during those times, right? It's going to be pretty hard to do that. So, some things to think about. The next thing I want to talk about is why this video and what's my experience with self-love. Well, I think this video is important because loving yourself is a requirement to living a healthy, meaningful, and happy life. After my toxic, abusive relationship, I got into therapy and realized not only did I not love myself, I didn't know how or what it takes to love yourself. I think this is because of my codependency, family dynamics, and toxic relationships. Obviously, my intimate relationship played a huge role, right? I made this video for anybody that may have that same problem or may be struggling with this topic. Whether this serves as a reminder or information, this will definitely help you in your personal life. You know, that's why I made this video. I think it's very important. You know, self-love is a requirement. You know, you want to be happy again, you know, you want to live a meaningful, healthy life, then you're gonna want to know what self-love is, what it looks like, and how to do it, right? So it's really important. Next, we're gonna talk about some key points and information. Self-love is a radical act after abuse. Choosing to love yourself after experiencing treatment that taught you the opposite is a powerful act of rebellion and healing. So keep that in mind right there. It's a radical act after abuse. You know, when I say, hope everybody's practicing radical self-care, that's what this is. Choosing to love yourself after experiencing some treatment that taught you not to. You know, it's got to be radical, you know. And what does radical mean, right? Radical means more so along the lines of extreme, right? So if you can imagine that, like extreme self-love. It's a process, not a destination. You know, I probably have this listed in about every video, and it's true. You know, it's not going anywhere. You know, just like reclaiming identity, learning self-love is an ongoing journey with ups and downs. Have patience and be gentle with yourself in the process. So next is start small and be consistent. Self-love don't need to be grand gestures. It can begin with small acts of self-care and kindness repeated consistently. Things like meditation, things like trusting yourself, making your own decisions, making small decisions that have, you know, they have small, you know, they have little to no risk, you know, little to no risk. Things like that, you know, just start small. That's what you want to do, is start small here. The next is challenge the inner critic. The internalized voice of the abuser often manifests as a harsh inner critic. Learning to identify, challenge, and reframe these negative thoughts is essential for cultivating self-love. So challenge the inner critic. That's every time you have a bad negative thought about yourself, challenge that thought. You know, do not go with that negative thought. You know, don't accept that. It's not true. The next is going to be practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same understanding and kindness you would offer a friend who's been hurt. Acknowledge your pain and validate your feelings. I talk about that one a lot. I'm not going to go in too much detail, but just practice self-compassion. You know, the same thing, advice you would offer a friend or a loved one that's not feeling so good, offer that to yourself. Next is set healthy boundaries. I have a whole video about this one, so I'm definitely not going to go into what healthy boundaries would look like, but setting healthy boundaries to protect your energy and well-being by setting them is another fundamental act of self-love, just so you know. The next is learn to say no. Prioritizing your own needs sometimes means saying no to others' demands. This is an act of self-respect and self-love. So all those times that you say no, you can thank yourself for exhibiting an act of self-love and self-respect. The next is to engage in self-care activities. Identify activities that nourish your mind, body, and spirit, and make them a regular part of your routine. For example, hobbies, exercise, relaxation, time in nature, or whatever speaks to you. Next is going to be acknowledge your worthiness. Remind yourself regularly that you are inherently worthy of love, respect, and happiness, regardless of what you have been through. That's a really important one. The next one is another really important one. Forgive yourself. Release any guilt or shame you may be carrying for things that were not your fault. Forgiveness of self is a crucial step in self-love, right? So, crucial. Just crucial steps right here. Next is celebrate your strengths and progress. Acknowledge your resilience and celebrate the small steps you take towards healing and self-love. There are going to be small steps, but if you can practice celebrating the small steps, it starts to get you prepared for the larger steps, and it's good. It's healthy for you to celebrate. The next thing is to seek supportive connections. Surround yourself with people who are kind, understanding, and supportive of your well-being. Healthy relationships can mirror back your worthiness. It's important to start having healthy relationships. And now that you know what you know, you don't want to be going around and dealing with the same unhealthy people, because all of your relationships are going to affect how you feel about yourself, because they're interactions, their experiences, so they're gonna affect you. So the more positive interactions and experiences you have with people and relationships, the more healthy your life is going to be, right? It just makes sense that way. All right, y'all. So the last one is to seek therapy. I say this in about every video, and it is not a mistake. It is for a reason. I feel very, very, very strongly about this 100%. This can be a powerful tool that can support trauma, healing, and development, of a healthy self-perception and self-loving behavior. So that is it, y'all. That is the video, on how to love yourself after abuse or trauma or narcissistic abuse, things of that nature. I hope that you guys really took a lot from this video. I had a good time taking notes and creating this video. These things are really important to me, and I'm so important to be sharing them with you guys and helping people out there. I see my subscribers are going up barely, and I really appreciate you guys for supporting me as well. We're all in this to help each other out. So yeah, I hope you guys are taking care of yourself, practicing radical self-care, self-acceptance, self-love, eating nutritious foods, exercising daily, and learning about yourself, feeding your mind, creating healthy relationships, and ultimately on your journey to finding who you are. I just created an Instagram recently. You could follow me on IG. It's Dontre Royal _, DONTREROYAL _. It's brand new. I don't even think I have any followers yet. Like the video, drop a comment, let me know how you guys are liking this content, if there's anything in specific you'd like me to address. Also have an email address that you can reach out to me on. Hit the subscribe hit the subscribe button, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my content up there so I can share with many other people. This content is very important. So the more subscribers and views that I get on this channel and for this content, the more it will be suggested to other viewers and ultimately helpful. So I'm just trying to help other people that are in the situation that I have been in before, and just going through things in life, just trying to do my part to give back. Thank you guys for everything. I appreciate you guys. You guys have a great Monday. This video will be up sometime later today, and stay tuned. I'm dropping videos every single day, so there's going to be something that eventually will resonate and relate to you. Thanks. See y'all next time. Bye.